And welcome back to the Hot Lap. What a qualifying that was. I can't wait to get into it. Wow, but Daniel Ricciardo there, probably the one happier person than Charles Leclerc. We're talking winners and losers, potential penalties. What happened to Mercedes even, and Ricciardo is very much back. The best I think we've seen since, before McLaren. But let's get into, let's look at the grid anyway, the potential grid, because I reckon it's definitely going to change. Maybe while I record this, maybe after. We've already done a breaking couple of minutes about who's potential penalties. But well done, Leclerc. Where did that come from? At no point did Ferrari throughout the session look like they're going to get pole position. But we've got Leclerc and Sainz, a Ferrari lockout front row. Now, the first of our potential naughty boys in Max Verstappen qualifying third. I mean, we're talking less than a tenth off pole, but still. But for me, if Leclerc was a surprise, the surprise overall had to be Daniel Ricciardo beating Sergio Perez. I mean, Perez, we're looking at only, a tenth and a bit off. But Daniel Ricciardo, what a result. And AlphaTauri's, I think, best qualifying of the year from the top of my head. Disappointment for Mercedes, though. Hamilton 6th, Piastri 7th, George Russell 8th. But what happened to those Mercedes? We thought they would be the ones potentially giving trouble to Verstappen. Them and Lando Norris in the McLaren. We'll get into him in a bit. Piastri 7th, Russell 8th, Bottas 9th, Zhou 10th, Gasly 11th, just outside of that top 10. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Not very good. Hulkenberg in 12th. I mean, to be fair, I just passed, obviously, Bottas and Zhou, but once again, well done, Alfa Romeo. Both of them in the top 10. Zhou can thank Albon for that, as he got a penalty, but slightly controversially. Was he over? Was he not? You saw Albon in the qualifying shaking his head vigorously. So Alonso 13th, the man that caused some of the chaos with the yellow flag and potentially caused Lewis Hamilton to get a penalty. More on that in a bit. Albon 14th, the man that didn't make it into Q3 just. Tsunoda, DNF apparently. Ocon 16th, disappointing there. And then Magnussen 17th. Stroll once again, disappointing. Norris, really disappointing. This was the man they thought was going to potentially challenge Verstappen for pole. He didn't. He messed up, I think, his first one. And then the yellow flags. It was either yellow flags or Norris did say McLaren had told him to come in. So we're not too sure still, even now when I looked at some of the news feeds, what really happened there. But let's get into some of those penalties here. Here is George Russell holding basically the whole grid up. And there is Max Verstappen holding the rest of the grid up. I mean, goodness me, what are we going to do? But, so we've run down the grid. Let's look at our winners and losers. And surely I think Lando Norris was going to be the biggest loser. But I don't want to do it to you, Sergio. But Sergio Perez, his home Grand Prix, what is going on? Poor Perez, out-qualified by Ricciardo, the man that's potentially going to replace him. It's only just, I know, but this is the worst thing that could have happened to him at his home Grand Prix. However, if Verstappen gets a penalty, for example, or even if not, funny first corner, I still think he has a shout at potentially winning the race. But it's exactly the opposite of what he needed. But the opposite of Perez. Well done, Charles Leclerc. Shot face there, and I think we were all shocked. That came out of nowhere, didn't it? I mean, what happened? That Ferrari looked meh, I guess, until Q3, and absolutely stunning lap. And also, well done to Carlos Sainz. But I think, last but not least here, the biggest winner of the day, I've given him an extra cheesy grin, Daniel Ricciardo, 4th, his second race back after his broken hand. What more can you ask for? Danny Rick, massive congratulations. Well done. What can I say? So let's get into those penalties, and shall we? Give me 2 seconds. As you can see here, there's the top of Verstappen. So Verstappen says, this is from planetf1.com, a rethink is needed on the minimum delta times as he faces an FIA investigation for impeding in the Mexico pit lane. Yet the Q1 session triggered a plethora of investigations, Verstappen included, as he, Alonso, Russell were picked up by the stewards for potentially impeding. Verstappen is set to start from third, but now awaits to see if there's going to be any action to his grid slot. Now, the drivers, as we know, they must set a minimum lap time to adhere to it. It's kind of started. There was a big deal at Monza when the Ferraris kind of breached it, but it didn't happen. But the time it doesn't start until that second safety car line. So Verstappen then is not sure. Sorry. And this has led to a growing instances of drivers holding station in the pit lane to build a gap. Verstappen then is not sure why it's been flagged up as a potential offence, arguing that it is the only way to now control the gap ahead, and so calls for a different solution. Completely agree. Different solution needed. I agree. But he said, I think it's all imperfect at the moment, so we need to come up probably with something else. It's just hard. Just the thing I don't understand is, like, everyone is trying to make a gap now in the pit lane, which is the only place where we can do so. So I don't really understand how you can be impeding someone. And if we look here, this is, I think, Crash.net. It's got Max Verstappen, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton all face post-qualifying investigations at the Mexican Grand Prix. And it says that the Red Bull drivers... We zoom that in for you. The Red Bull drivers are under investigation, and Mercedes drivers are under investigation by the FIA stewards, not obviously Perez. Apologies. Verstappen was pinged for a similar incident at the Singapore Grand Prix, for which he was just reprimanded. But this is the interesting thing. The FIA later admitted to F1 teams that the controversial decision to give Verstappen a reprimand was a mistake. It was confirmed that Verstappen should have received the standard 3-place grid penalty, and the FIA promised they would not use the Singapore decision as a precedent. Now, meanwhile, Hamilton is under investigation for allegedly not slowing sufficiently under yellow flags caused by a spinning Alonso at the end of Q1. Like Hamilton, Tsunoda and Sargent are also under investigation. No update there whatsoever. So I guess they're going to look at Hamilton. If he didn't slow down, it's going to be a penalty. Verstappen and Russell, I'm assuming it will be a penalty, which will be interesting then, because good old Danny Rick is going to be third. Hamilton, though, has said, he said he's confident over avoiding a Mexican Grand Prix penalty. Hamilton, it says here on Racing News 365, ended qualifying for the Mexican Grand Prix in 6th place, but the 7-time champion is in danger of being demoted further back, potentially 3 or even 5 places. Hamilton has voiced confidence that he will avoid a penalty for the Mexican Grand Prix. He was summoned to the stewards after qualifying for allegedly failing to slow for a yellow flag in Q1 after Alonso's spin. This is Article 2.5. B of the International Sporting Code, meaning his 6th place on the grid could be under threats, with the 2-time Mexican winner being one of the 6 drivers summoned. Hamilton said, I went slower through turns 1 and 2 as I went into turn 3. The light yellow went off, Hamilton told media, but I was 2 tenths down on my best time, so I didn't go faster in that sector, so it shouldn't be a problem. Hamilton, though, is expecting a tough race on Sunday, as he revealed his Mercedes is struggling with cooling down. With cooling. So let's get into Hamilton's poor Mercedes on planetf1.com. Where's the story here? Yeah, Hamilton has described Mercedes W14 as a nightmare after he qualified P6. Of the many contenders to challenge Max, we all thought that Mercedes was going to be one of them, but he'd go on, as we know, to qualify P6, and he is kind of not confident of an easy race. Speaking after the qualifying, he labelled his car as a nightmare and predicted it a real challenge. He said, I've been struggling all weekend with the car and it's been a bit of a nightmare to drive. He went on to say, we've had to try and put the performance together piece by piece. We made good changes going into qualifying so that I was much happier with the car. Q1 and Q2 weren't looking too bad, he went on to say, especially the second run in Q2. But the car is just really peaky. Sometimes it's in the window, sometimes it's not, and I wouldn't squeeze anything more out of it on that final lap. He went on to say the race is definitely going to be a challenge. We will be overheating the tyres and the brakes, so it won't be easy to battle the cars around us. I don't really know what kind of race to expect, but it's going to be on a knife edge. So there we go for Lewis Hamilton. But I think the last big piece of news, once again, Ricciardo feels a lot like my old self, he says, after shock P4, maybe P3, in Mexico qualifying. Danny Ricciardo says he feels a lot like my old self after stunning the Formula One paddock by qualifying 4th for the Mexican Grand Prix. Oh, look at that beautiful. Doesn't that AlphaTauri look a bit more nicer? Now he's qualified 4th. Now, in only his second weekend back from a hand injury, he has he showed good pace in FP2, and he slipped back to 9th on Saturday's FP3. However, he was on form on both occasions. He was helped by teammate Tsunoda, who was able to focus on towing the Australian, as his own weekend was already compromised because Tsunoda is starting from, I think, pretty much the back with a new power unit. But even without a tow in Q3, he managed 4th and split to the 2 Red Bulls, one of them being Sergio Perez, obviously. Not good for his career, and I feel so sorry for him. Why did it have to happen at his home Grand Prix? But speaking to Sky F1, Ricciardo explained that he started the weekend with a bit of a different setup, which he felt comfortable with, combined with what he described as a positive chip on my shoulder. The 8-time champion said he's regained his confidence. I know I haven't done much this year, he says, race-wise, but I feel a lot like my old self. So, Daniel Ricciardo, I mean, we are all gunning for you. Goodness me. Imagine if he won. I mean, yes, okay, probably getting ahead of myself a tiny bit, but imagine if he won. Oh, that would be something. So, and let's remind ourselves, winners and losers. Our first loser, Perez, out qualified by Daniel Ricciardo, the man that may well take your career. Oh, pressure's on for the race. Pressure is definitely on, and Charles Leclerc, that shock pole, no one expected it. Did he expect it? I don't know, but no one else did. Ferrari looked average, but well done, Charles Leclerc. But the man of the moment for me is not the pole sitter, it is Daniel Ricciardo on his second race after his broken hand, qualifying 4th. Well done, Danny Rick. What is going to happen? Who knows in the race? I mean, I think if Verstappen keeps his P3, he may well be leading by the first corner. He's done it before. I think in 2021, when the two Mercedes were fighting with each other, are the two Ferraris going to fight with each other? I think they're going to need some teamwork. If Verstappen keeps that P3, he could potentially be further back. That's certainly going to help Perez, isn't it? Who will also move up a place. But the Mexican Grand Prix, fingers crossed. Let's hope for an amazing race. There may well be breaking news ahead after this. We will see if I can stay up. It's currently 1:32. The clocks have officially gone back in the UK. Fingers crossed. Like, subscribe. If you made it to the end, you are a champion. This is the Hot Lap. We will speak to you soon. Thank you very much.